Hello, man. Hello, Mgtows. Let me get my boom set. It always seems to fall. Hello, man. Hello, Mgtows. Let me get my boom set. It always seems to fall. There we go. Had to turn that off. Get this. I put a book right there, and I can't see that. First, second, and third. Hello, Portuguese Mgtow. First, second, and third. That's great. Today we're going to talk about the theater of the absurd again. We're going to try to work in a little Camus. We're going to ask the question: is life worth living? That's what Camus was asking in the book Sisyphus. Is life worth living? For some Mgtows, I would say no. For some men, I would say no. They look out upon Mgtow and as an escape from the horror that they have to live in, which is, child support, alimony, slavery, a working man in a working situation. Whereas life isn't pleasant. I know that feeling. I've went through that many, many, many years of going through that, and it sucks. Yes, and you at one point in your life you will ask that question: is life worth living? And that's what Camus was asking, and a Camus. But if you want me to say it right, then spell it right. A lot of people complain about that. So there were some ideas that came on through this, and most of this stuff, it comes from the why you are a Mgtow. Why you are a Mgtow? Isn't that that's a profound question they ask you when they argue with you, and what they're really saying is, why are you this thing? That's what Soren Kierkegaard would say. Why are you this thing? Or what is this stuff that makes up Mgtow? Why is this stuff with you, and why does it exist? Because it bothers them. It bothers them a lot, and they can't put their finger on why we're Mgtow. And I have a perfectly simple answer to this. It's because. And I go, well, that's immature, Joe. Because? And I says, no, it's a perfectly good answer to Mgtow. Why you're Mgtow? It's Latin, by cause. We're all Mgtow by cause. So by cause is something happened to you that forced you into this thing. Otherwise, you wouldn't have been a Mgtow. Nobody grows up and takes a Mgtow course and takes a video editing course in high school and says, I want to be a Mgtow when I grow up. And that's an absurdity. I want to be a Mgtow when I grow up is absurdity. And this is the theater of the absurd. So we look out at the question: is white life worth living for those men? And there's two forms of this, and this is where I was at, and this is a situational question from my situation. Any question you form as a philosopher, you're forming it situationally to your situation. So I'll do it why I'm a Mgtow. Why am I a Mgtow? Why have I been a Mgtow? Why did I choose this? I look at it, the two forms of the absurd. For me, in situational awareness, it becomes, it may not be for you, I say, but it's for me, and that's good enough because I'm a Mgtow. One of the absurd is I was forced by society in a attempted murder in cause. The cause was the divorce. The cause was gender dynamics. The cause was she was unhappy. The cause was all these things that caused this outbreak in my life, and it left me disabled to the world for a while. And on the other hand of the absurd, we look at it comes in the way of force forced me into something. And what did it force me into after? Force was merely afterward. Force was merely after the event. So I've experienced the force in my life of the state and the gynocentric and the feminism and whatever you call it by any other name. It comes in a form of force for some men. But there were two sections of the assert, what had happened to me and what I was left with after that. And what I was left with after that was not a lot. I was living in my van. It was a very horrible time in my life. And what that does is it puts you in a search for the absurd. You become the absurdist. Yeah, you will become the absurdist. You're looking for answers to life in which you're looking for the what is life. You're looking for what is the meaning of life, and there is no answer to that. And Camus and Kierkegaard and Gustav would tell you there's no answer to that question. You just even the pragmaticists of today, and which Camus was, I think, but they'll tell you there's no answer. It's an absurd question. It's asking the absurd of the absurd. It's chaos. Chaos is whatever happens. That's the way I felt. Life came and visited me in chaos. It's simply an act by myself of the violence that came towards me was simply an act of suicide in a way. It was an act of the former. The end results, and I like to look at Sisyphus in this. I like to look at the book Sisyphus. I like to look at the story of Sisyphus, what happened there, what had happened to Sisyphus. Most people see he ends up rolling a rock up a hill, and but in that story, there's much more. There's much more it comes from this. What had happened is he wasn't given a proper burial, which was his instruction. His wife disrespected the order of Sisyphus, and he wasn't given a proper burial. So Sisyphus became this thing every day, this apparition of a futile task. When he ended up at the river Styx, he was an apparition, and he came back because he was denied something that he was the king he thought he should have had. And in that way, there was a suicide that happened every night. And then he'd roll the rock up the hill. At night, there was a suicide. And then that morning, the rock was to be rolled back up again. It was a tenacious thing. This is the way I felt in life. Every day, there's this sort of suicide. Every day, there's this act that I commit of absurdity. I think about these things, and what had happened was, in my case, is you didn't kill me good enough, and you left me with injuries that would last the rest of my life. So I think about this every time I think about my knees, and every time I think about my tendons peeling up, and every time I think about the pain that I have to go through and endure. You didn't kill me good enough. You failed at that killing. And the most cruelest thing you can do to a person is almost kill him, is attempt to murder him. Because then you leave him with damage for a lifetime. In war, we call this defeat the rear end, to the rear support. You don't kill guys, you just wound them and send them to rear support, and it taps on their resources. It taps on their ability to fight the war on the front because they're taking care of so many men in the rear. So by injuring someone, you injure the rest of their life, and that's the cruelest thing you can do to someone, is leave them alive, and it's a failure. What you're forced to look at with Sisyphus, they were forced to look at the failure of what they did every night, every day. When you see Sisyphus rolling that rock up, what you're really seeing at the end of that day is the gods were seeing their own failure. So they'd take the rock and they'd bring it down, and then Sisyphus would roll the rock back up, and then they would take the rock and they'd bring it down because they looked at it. He walked back into town as this apparition, this ghost. I'm back, he said. And this is Mgtow. Mgtow when we took on the idea of the ghost, we took on the idea of the ghosting for a good reason. Now, a lot of guys go with the John Galt sort of ghosting with that, but it wasn't really about the John Galt sort of ghosting. It was about the ghost that the world, the way it is with feminism and their gentle murders of our souls when they do these things to us. We had society right, I think. We were doing a good job in society. Our countries are blooming. We have this great thing going, and all comes along. Comes along feminism, and they just trash it like it's nothing. It was a gentle murder. It was a failed murder of traditionalism. It was a failed murder of how men want to live, and that's what they left us. They left wounded men that are apparitions of what they used to be. And when they look at us as a Mgtow, all they see is their failures. And that's the truth. All they see is their failures. That's why I do Mgtow. That's the question to why I do Mgtow. Because if none of us, if none of us came around to share our stories, if none of us came around to share our discontentment on this, they would think that everything was going right, and that wasn't a failed murder of our spirituality, a failed murder, an attempted murder, which left us wounded like Sisyphus, like me in life. They left us wounded with nothing to replace it with, except for child support and slavery and a lot of things that really don't make sense. And once you see how absurd, like fatherhood now, you're not the father, the judge tells her, and she's going to get the kids. You're not the father is what he's saying. And then you say, I'm not the father, so don't ask me for nothing. They said, oh yes, but you are the father. But you just told me you weren't the father. And that's where my you're not the father thing comes from. It's absurdity. You have to live in this planet. This planet is an absurd place. So how tenacious can Mgtow be about this? And back in the day when we were going over this theory in our head about what Mgtow was, ghosting was some people take that to the John Galt type ghosting, and it makes sense that way for you. If you want a John Galt type ghost, that's okay. But this type of ghosting calls for a little more philosophy. And we say Mgtow is a philosophy. So please listen in when I tell you, read Camus, read about the suicide, read about the how to cure, how to look at that, how to figure these things out in your brain, and really what Mgtow is much, much deeper. There's a lot more on the top. There's more underneath the surface. Why you think about why we do these things, it gets really deep. And the ghost, the apparition of what we used to be is very important to know. How tenacious can Mgtow be about this? Well, we could be pretty tenacious, and that's forever. Forever is a long time, and that's how much we will spend. Men will spend time forever on something that they believe in, and that's a long time. It would be easier to, like I said, to pay my toll and release me from the slavery, or release me from this deed that you think you've pulled over on me. But hey, while we're here, you'll have to look at me, a Mgtow, every single day. And that's many Mgtows now. That's a lot of Mgtows. When you look at the apparition of a Mgtow, when you look at the ghost of a Mgtow, all you're looking at is societal's failures. He's telling you, you guys are failing us, man. You have failed so badly that we're upset about it. So it's not about us. It's about their failures. It's about the half murder of the soul they committed on us. It's about the inept job that they did when they decided to do that to us. And that's what Mgtow is about. And I know it's very, very hard to understand sometimes the philosophy of Mgtow, but that's why I'm here. I'm here to understand, to help men understand the philosophy, because otherwise if it was just about complaining about girls and feminism and everything, that wouldn't be a philosophy at all. Men do that. Blue pill men do that every day at weddings, and they do that every day in bars. They do that every day. Oh, you hear it. They go off and they say things. Oh man, marriage sucks. And my wife did this today, and my wife. Every man does that. There's no difference between a married male and a Mgtow at that point if it's lighthearted and it's not a philosophy. So we make it into a philosophy. We look at all the philosophies that were there before us, and like I say, from Plato to Socrates up to Foucault, Camus, and Gustav, and Kierkegaard. We get this building of a philosophy, and that's what we have to look at. And I think that's why Marcus was so important around here, because it leads us up to where we're at today in the world of modernity, and how we do think about these things in this world that we have to live in. And Mgtow, Mgtow plays a role in this. It plays a very big role in this because it resembles a lot of things from the past. Like I say, it resembles the story of Sisyphus. It resembles rolling that rock up the hill, you carrying that moon, that planet on your back like this. You know, I'm carrying that around me all the time on my back, and that's what I am. I'm a working man, and that's what they forced me to be. And now I got to work 2 jobs because I got a slave to carry around with me on my back. So when we look at the ghost, we look at the ghost in more of an apparition. I'm here, the ghost. I'm here to show you the apparition. You can't do nothing about an apparition. I'm here to show you what you made, and I am what you made, world. So they could, when they come around, it's what I say all the time, point and laugh, because I'm giggling when they're complaining about what I say. I am giggling my ass off because I'm thinking, you've made me. You made me. The narcissism involved with that is incredible, that you come out and complain about what you made. It's like, don't make Mgtows, and there would be no Mgtows. And it is by cause. It's because. Why am I a Mgtow? Because. By cause. You made me. She made me. The attempted murder of my life made me. The attempted murder of my soul and everything I believed in. And they didn't do a very good job. They left me alive, and that was the cruelest thing they could possibly do. Leave me alive, disabled in this world. And that's the apothecary, when he went to get the poison, and the apothecary put the poison in his drink, and he was drinking it, and he says, "Would you like to buy the cure?" And he says, "Why would I need the cure?" And the apothecary said, "Because you just drank the poison." It's like, don't poison somebody. You're going to do it. And then he explained to him, if you fail at this thing, this person is going to have to live with what you did. So listen to me carefully. You need to know everything about this. Now in war, we just call it, we attack the rear support, and that's what they're doing. That's what they left men with. This Me Too movement comes in. When you attack men like this, and you leave them wounded to society, disabled in a society that they built. So, we're going to have to pay for that. Society will pay for that. It depletes you can see it happening. And that's where the Mgtow theory of feed the pig comes in. Or swell the pig, just keep feeding that pig, and that pig's going to explode one of these days. Just keep on pumping that up, baby. It'll become too expensive to feed after a while. That's a hard concept to understand too. But in Mgtow, all these things seem to form together, and they go together in quite a good mix of who, you know, you ask me why I'm doing this, and I'm just doing this. I'm ghosting. I'm here ghosting. I'm coming up and I'm talking about the theater of the absurd, because I'm letting you know that I still exist. And it's by cause. What is that cause? Well, ask me what that cause is. Don't ask me why I'm Mgtow. Ask me what was the cause of those things, and I'll tell you. So we look at these things, and you got to look at these things from their point of view. When they see it, they see the hideous shape of a Mgtow, this thing that they don't quite understand. It becomes a reminder of their failure. Of course, they're going to be mad at that. This creature of Mgtow that taunts them by the absurd, like force, like they're forcing it back on them, an apparition that stalks them all the time. That's what they see when they look at us, these hideous creatures. The ones that we're stalking, the ones that thought my life was their choice, and they never considered my wellness or my happiness. All they considered was their greed for their better life. All they consider is their greed, hypergamy, their greed, how I'm a working machine, their greed. The reason I have to go Galt is what their greed. In Mgtow, you become the apparition of the absurd. It's a warning to the earthers or the birthers about doing the job next time. If you're going to try to kill me, completely kill me, or don't do that job at all, because you're going to leave something that's going to haunt you for the rest of your life. Hence, we become the ghost. We go ghost. We fall off the grid. We don't care much anymore. There's no Galt town of Galt ditch or whatever they called it. And I really don't believe in objectivism. I think it's the weakest of all. I think it's the weakest of all philosophies, and Ayn Rand's objectivism is the weakest of all philosophies, because it's written by one of the weakest of people. We go ghost to haunt our oppressors. We go ghost for repentance. We want a repentance. We want them to stop forcing these things on us that we don't appreciate from them. And that the only thing we can do is go ghost. Stop playing by their rules. Stop giving them whatever that is they want, and they'll stop. And then the mere sight of you will infuriate them. But like a ghost, you cannot do nothing. You can punch at it, and you'll be punching at air. It's the theory of Mgtow that we're so spread out that you'll be punching at air. I am the ghost of societal failure is what I am. I am the ghost of that failed murder of my soul. I am that ghost. But with me, I kind of take this scorched earth policy. I am that ghost. Well, all you will look at, you get to stand on the scorched earth that will be untillable, because I am not there to till the ground either. You're this scorched earth that you cannot use no more. And if more men get aboard this idea, I will not be there to till the front ground. I will not be there to take care of you. I will not bring these two strong arms for your assistance anymore. I am not the protector. I am not the provider anymore. I am not a father. And that's what I'm saying. And that's not an absurd statement. I am a man. Until they get used to that idea that men are human too, there will always be Mgtow. And how tenacious can we be in this thing? Well, we can be very tenacious. Mgtow, Mgtow is going to proceed. It's going to go on. Men are going to get that idea. Men are going to always be met with the absurd. And what Camus called the absurd was that suicide of that forced suicide of men's souls, that forced suicide of men. And when you start asking you these questions, is life worth living? That's where the question starts. And there's a philosophical suicide. There's a spiritual suicide. There's a quite real suicide, moralistic or or elsewhere, a noble. I think moralistic and noble are different than suicides of pain and defeatism and them things. But we witness it in men, and we have to ask ourselves about we say all the time we're trying to help with the suicide rate, and we try to understand it, and it's present, and it's ever present, and each one of us have had probably a friend or two go down that road. Yeah, Galt's Gulch, yeah. Turin. Yeah, there's two ways that I was explaining. The original way that we thought about it was a ghost and apparition, in the real sense of I will just be that thing that haunts you from far. I will go Galt and I will haunt you. But the guys went, oh yeah, John Galt, and it's like they take that too far. They take that objectivism too far, and they don't. It's a self-fulfilling failure at that point. Objectivism is a self-fulfilling failure. If you look at the life of Ayn Rand, she couldn't hold up to her own. At the end, she went crazy because she couldn't hold up to her own moralistic intentions. The existential externalism was too much to be. She couldn't be that, and that's what we ask in philosophy. It's the first question you ask yourself. I'm just going to be. What am I going to be? So, David M's around. Hey, David M. Mgtows are all losers, it looks like. No, Mgtows are very brilliant, intelligent men that have decided to take a path, noticing the surroundings around them, and noticing the world that you live in, and noticing what it's like for men, noticing feminism, noticing all these unfair laws, noticing the rights of men are a little bit depleted, aren't they? What else would you do? Only a simp, and that's why we say simp, only a simp would live with that. Only a simp would try to engage. Now, we had this argument play out. It was the argument between Soren Kierkegaard and Gustav. Gustav was this nihilist that Soren Kierkegaard kind of did the existentialist internal externalism, and Gustav was saying no, nihilism was just it. And we watched this argument play out between that, and both of them came to the same opinion at the end, that it's the absurd that rules, because you can't. Well, how could I know? How could I know it was in the past or in the future? Well, how could I know what my death is? How could I know what the universe is? I can't. And to pretend to is absurd in itself. And the most honest thing you can say to yourself in the world is, I just don't know. I can home in on these things. I can take a look at them. I can develop a philosophy for these things, but I must never give in. I must never simp to the rhythm of the blue pill. Oh. But most people do. Most people are sheeps, and we explain. We could take little bits of Nietzsche. That's how you'd have to pronounce it. Someone argued with me the other day about how I pronounce it. I say Nietzsche, and then I say, if you say it right, it'll sound. If you say it the way he said it, it's going to really sound stupid. It's Nietzsche. Because that's the duchy, or the Dutch, where it came from before Prussia, and it'll be Nietzsche, and that sounds stupid. But if you say it in France, it'll be Nietzsche. So it's dependent on where you are in the world. In Ohio, we say just Nietzsche. Nietzsche. No, see, that's absurdity, and that's the things we argue about sometimes. That was somebody's slight to me. Joe, you say it wrong. And that's like, say, when I say Camus. In French, they would go Camus. And that's when I say Kimmy, that's what I'm talking about. When I call someone Kimmy. I have little reasons why I do all those things that I say when I say Kimmy. I know you don't understand. But that's the argument of dialect. And the argument of dialect is great if you ever get into it with somebody. I live in Ohio. We had the big argument of dialect up here. I bought some Costa Rican and I roasted it. And it's very nice. It's got a real acidic flavor to it, and it's very nice. So I had to go I bought some special cream and some special sugar to do with that acidic flavor that it's got. And it doesn't have that earthy chocolate flavor that you would expect out of a Jamaican or a Brazilian. It has that nice acidic-y, and it's kind of nice. Usually when you get the cinnamony, people mistake that for the acidic, and they don't like it. Or it tastes like, a wrapper or cardboard. So hello, Sharif, Shafir, and hello, Terrain. Hello, Gravy Back Bill. Hello, everybody. James Gregory. Hello, James Gregory. Hello, David M. Hello, everybody. That's it. Now we're talking about the theater of the absurd today. We're talking about Camus. We're talking about Sisyphus. We're talking about him rolling that rock up the hill and what the philosophy behind that was. We're talking about suicide. We're talking about different types of suicide, and when Camus would talk about it, he would just call it the absurd. He wouldn't say the word suicide. He would say the word absurd, because that's what a man's doing when he's contemplating that. And when he's contemplating that, he's talking about his life. He's contemplating the idea: is life worth living? Is life worth living sometimes as a man? And as a 20-year-old man, he would say, life was great. As a 20-year-old man, life was great. And but as you get up into your 30s, and then you breach that 30, you start growing up, things start changing for you. Throw a divorce on top of that, throw some enslavement on top of that, throw some sore knees and a crinky back in about 40, and then that gets a little harder. And then by the time you're 50, you're starting to wonder, is this thing worth living? And I think that's where a lot of us will end up, and a lot of Mgtows will end up. And then you become the theater of the absurd. You become absurdity itself. And Mgtow, you become that thing that shows the world its absurdity. You reflect it, you mirror it, you send it back at them, and that's all you can do. Why fight? Why fight with something that doesn't want to change? Why fight with something that thinks it's right? There's not a lot we can do short of having a zombie apocalypse or an apocalyptic future where which in itself is a part of absurdity. It was people thinking about the destruction of all the earth, so men can get men back, and men can get this society back to where it was. Which is a horrible idea. It's a horrible idea. So we become the walking absurd. We become that apparition of what was. In all, it was they half murdered our souls when they took them things from us, the things that men had, and they left these apparitions out there. We're ghosts that they can't see. They refuse to see. There's no empathy. There's no apathy for us. We can see that in the suicide rate. We can see that in the homeless rate. We can see that in a lot of things. But very few intellectuals will, and they always avoid the questions in the Congress. They avoid the homeless question. It would take $25 billion to cure homelessness. Yeah, it would. $25 billion. That's it. We're gonna give Trump 50 billion for a wall, but it would take 25 billion to cure homelessness. I think homelessness is a national crisis. It really is. I mean, if we're going to have a national emergency, let's call it on something that will assist the people. But they avoid those subjects because it forces them to look at themselves as humans. And they're married people, they're blue pill people. They are the absurd. They're bought into the absurd. They live in a fantasy fiction land of the Matrix. Of course, they are the absurd. We get to look at that. We get to examine that, not them. They can't see out of that bubble. So fighting against it sometimes is the absurd. How do you explain to them? You can't really explain to them. They either have to feel it or they don't. Either they have, and I'm glad, I'm grateful for this thing. Either they have the ability to feel empathy and emotion, and or they don't. And I'd rather not have people around here that have no empathy. I'd rather not have objectivists around here, utilitarians around here, because we become them. And that's not something we are, just by fact. There's a lot of things to look at in Mgtow. There's a lot of things to apply to it. We can go through this thing with this kind of frat boy mentality, smash your beer can on your head and like, woo! I'm just not caring about dating the women, but I want to date women. And then I see the absurd come on, and I'm a monk, but I'm dating. And then I see the absurd in Mgtow, and I have to start asking myself, didn't you guys get the memo? Didn't you guys realize what Mgtow was about? No, they don't want to think about the undertones and the philosophical honesty that it takes to be a Mgtow. I watched a young man talking the other day. He was saying he was a monk, and then he's saying, but I go out with the girls and I just hit that. I said, what, is that something a monk would do? Is that something a monk would talk about with you? Would a monk talk about his penis with you? No, he wouldn't. So are you a monk? And then I'd have to ask the, I become the reflection of what he was talking about, but he'll get mad at me. And that's the absurd. You get mad at me for becoming the reflection of what I just did Mgtow on you. That was Mgtow. And I just did Mgtow on you. And you're saying you're a Mgtow monk. The thing that is the total understanding of what's going on. You're saying you're that because you're red-pilled? No, red-pill people believe that they see something that other people don't see. They believe only they can see that. No, I can explain my philosophy and in philosophy and by truths, which makes me a monk. Yeah, it's funny, and the absurd creeps into Mgtow. And then we have to go Mgtow on Mgtow, and that's when it's sad, and it becomes so funny. And I sit back on the Mgtow bench, and I'm just eating some popcorn, and just like, oh shit, look at that, and look at that, and laugh. But laugh and point and laugh is all you can do in the face of chaos. I mean, buildings are falling, and minds are breaking, and all you can do is point and laugh sometimes and just go, oh yeah, but you did it to yourself. Hey, you did it to yourself. And like, I was just sitting over here, don't blame me, and don't blame me for saying it. Don't blame the messenger. And that's what we are. We're all the messengers of Mgtow, bringing it to the people. And they get so mad and wound up and triggered, and they say mean things to us, casually cruel things. They say, you're a deadbeat dad. No, I'm not. I'm just a guy. I'm, that portion of my life is long over. You're this, you're that, and they think the casual cruelty and the insult and the shaming will do it. No, I don't feel that kind of shame anymore. I'm an apparition. I'm dead. I died a long time ago in this society. I died to that society. I don't believe in it no more. That's craziness. Yeah, they think that'll work, and it doesn't, and it triggers them more. And I'm just a messenger. You have to listen to me. You don't have to listen to me. Everybody's got their choices on YouTube. You can turn it off and go away if it triggers you so bad. That's what I tell them. You can go away. You can turn the channel. You don't have to. I had someone yelling at me about my observation of Karen Carpenter and her husband, about the divorce that was had for him, which he got nothing. James Burris, and do you know the name James Burris? No, that was Karen Carpenter's husband. Of course you don't know the name. They never included him. Christ. But if you turn that around and that happened to a female, I always say that if a female was cut out of the will and she was the wife, there would be a cry to the heavens. The gynocentric gods of the courts would come down upon that person if that happened to him. But no, James Burris is a real estate salesman somewhere in California that nobody knows. He may be dead. He may not. Nobody knows. Hello, Joey. The monk would have an olive branch in one hand and a sword in the other. Yeah, that's an interesting idea. A sword. Swords are interesting ideas. You know what swords are? Swords are plows. Yeah, that's where that comes from. In the old days of traditionalism, the farmers would. It comes from the very traditional herding ideas. The farmers would have a piece of metal, and there wasn't a lot of metal to be had, so he'd beat his sword into a plow, and he'd be making hay. When he was making hay, when predators came upon his farm, he would beat his plow back into a sword, and he would have a sword. So swords and plows are the same things. Interesting idea. I seen that on the wall of. It was on the wall. It was something that was written by someone back in 1860 when our company, the company that I worked for a while, making plows, opened up in 1860. He says, "What are swords? What are these instruments?" We were hijacked in the 40s and the 30s, our company, and forced to make bombs. And in the 20s and the 30s, and we were forced to make bombs and parts and wear plates for trains and stuff like that, and instead of making plows. And then we got back to making plows again after the war, and we realized that what this thing was. And what is war? I go into look at my thing, what is war? We ask, that's a very complex question. What is war? There's a difference between what actual war is and what causes war. And what is the causes of war? That's a big one. That's where we should be right now, asking those questions. Let me fix that comment for you. My father simped so hard, my sister and I thought our house after 2008 collapsed, and chose a shitty house. Way to go, dumbass. Yeah. My father simped so hard for my father collapsed. That's funny. I have to figure that out in my head, but it's funny. So today we're talking about the absurdity. Absurdity should be the last philosophy that you get to, and you should be funny, and it's keck, and it's the things that we see around the internet. Although most people don't understand that, the theater of absurdity. When we look out at the the blue pill nation. That's what you're saying. You're saying, I see something wrong with this. There's some contradiction in terms. You have two terms, a subject and a predicate. Aristotle taught us this, and it should come to some true. There's a contradiction in the terms, and you're noticing it. There's a negation of terms, is what they would call it, and that becomes the absurd. And we look out over all this stuff that we see, and it drives us crazy. It'll make you mad. It'll make you Mgtow. It'll make you rageful. And then you get over that and you come in and you just learn to laugh at it, because that's the only real thing we can do. Hello, Doug's. Doug's wants to say hello. He's in here now. Dougie has entered the room. He's so pathetic in the winter. He's so slow, and he needs things, and he needs loving. Hi, Doug. So that's all I wanted to talk about is Camus. And if you get a chance to, probably I would say audiobook would be the best. Camus, the Sisyphus, the book about Sisyphus and suicide, male suicide, because that's an important topic to us, and how he looks at it in the several different ways that he looks about it. The scientific suicide, and the philosophical suicide, and the spiritual suicide. There's all different ways to look at it, and he'll teach you about Gustav and Kierkegaard's nihilism, and it's a very good book. I would suggest buying the audio book and going through it, and then you'll see, because it's very complex reading, and it brings you up to what Mgtow is. And I think he was a Mgtow, and I think he's seen it. I think he's seen the thing building back then. I think he's seen what was happening to men back then, and he was asking those questions, going through it in the 50s. And Doug's, oh yeah, you're going through it in the 50s. He had to ask himself a question, and that question was, what was life worth living for men? And for some men, it's not. And that's the question we should be asking. And that's all I wanted to talk about today. And I hope you're having a great day, but what I really wanted to do is stop by and say hello, and hello, men, hello, Mgtows, and I hope you're all doing well, and I hope this thing is not making you too crazy. And to thank each man for coming around, and thanks a lot for being Mgtow.